Giant stalker, dragon stalker, crypt stalker, demon stalker, rift stalker, grown stalker, crypt stalker, scourge stalker, wind runner. I'm a pony, elite skill hunter. A death dealer, a life stealer. That's just because.
Welcome to episode 145 of the Hunting Party Podcast. I'm not your deputies from WoW Insider at TPS or Call to Auction.
But I am Dark Brew from thebrewhall.com and the Brew Hall on Twitter.
And I am Frosttime from Warcraft Hunters Union, WoW Insider, and Frosttime WHU on Twitter.
And from Best Buy next Tuesday night. And I'm Ellie Sonder from the Hunting Party Podcast.
Which we knew about from a minute ago. Let's see, today is Saturday, September the 22nd. And if you want to participate in the chat room but aren't registered, just go to the chat window and just type Squee! It's almost here. It's like Mists of Pandaria time, new expansion.
Mm-hmm. And our lovely moderator, as always, is Ollie Sonder. And speaking of the chat room, I'm totally out of order. I'm all caught up in the squee. So speaking of the chat room, we are joined today in the live chat room by Abelin314, Akal22, Avarice, Eliger Wolf, Bella Sky, Big Ticket BM Jager, Chiami, Chuck Hunter, Conjure-1, Davon Rexar, Elipide, Get the Gorbrax-1, Greco Alonzis, Homer Jade, Hotshot Gun, Tillerathris, Mullingrew, Necri, Oxander, PFC Stroud, Primoc, Rhino Banya, Sindra the Hunter, Slugslinger, Solar Knight, Teorite 1, Warvinny, Wreck, and all sorts of other people who don't like us enough to bother logging into the horrible, horrible Ustream experience. And, of course, your lovely moderator is Ollie Sonder. If you have any questions you want us to answer about Mists of Pandaria, about leveling in just a few days, about the midnight release, you can send those in a private message to Ollie Sonder. She will rank your questions and, in fact, determine whether or not they get answered based on your answer to this question. How long will it take for Frosttime to reach level 90?
Excellent question. Because you're not going for the slow and steady, are you? That's not the plan.
No. Alrighty, so Mists of Pandaria is in just a few days. I guess that's our first announcement. We're, 3 days out? 3 days out from the expansion
We are
release?
3 days out, yes. September the 25th, which is Tuesday, with the midnight release. So we were talking about this before the show. It's going to be released midnight Pacific time, which means whatever Pacific time translates into your area. That's
right.
when you'll be able to log in and play.
And so the important things is it's going to be released on Tuesday at midnight, which technically means it's Monday night, late Monday night when the clock turns 12. That's Tuesday at midnight.
Yes.
And it is midnight Pacific time, which means you can buy the game if you're going to go and buy a physical copy, which not many people do anymore. You can buy it at midnight wherever you are, but the servers don't come online until midnight Pacific time, which is 1 a.m. Mountain Time, 2 a.m. Central Time, 3 a.m. Eastern Time. That's when you'll actually be able to log in, assuming everything goes well. However, they've been pretty good the last couple expansions.
They have, and someone in the chat room saying you can log in whenever and it'll automatically change, so you don't actually have to log out. So if you happen to be logging in, a minute before, you, I guess, won't be able to go to Pandaria, and then the clock ticks. And
But last time they did make us all log out for an hour, though. Remember?
Did they?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it was so annoying.
The servers were down.
Well, we'll have to see how they do that. I mean, if they, because some events.
The point is, you can't play the game until midnight Pacific time.
Yes, which is like, so if you're on the East Coast, for example, that's 3 a.m. my time, which means I'm just gonna go in there after work the next day and start my journey then.
That's 2 a.m. my time, which I love because I like going to pick up a physical copy of the game at midnight in a store, and I have plenty of time to come back and install it and patch it. And I got 2 hours before I'm actually able to get in. So a couple announcements before we get into the Mists of Pandaria info. The first of which is the final WHU in-game event of Cataclysm is tonight. It is tonight, Saturday the 22nd. It's at 6 p.m. Ice Crown server time. I believe Ice Crown servers in Mountain Time. And this is open to any hunters who want to attend. We're preferred if you could be level 25. If you're not, that's okay. We do want everybody possible to have access to the Glyph of Explosive Trap. You have to be level 25 to get the glyph, and the glyphs are available in the WHU Guild Bank. And we're going to be playing around with the explosive track knockback a little bit and seeing what kind of fun stuff we can do with that. And then we're going to do some just random insanity after that. It'll be lots of combat. Also, so based on we talked about this on the show a little bit before, but based on Alessandro's idea, I am going to be doing the race to level 90, going for World First Hunter level 90, or at the very least server first, but hopefully World First Hunter level 90. And the way that goes is it's not something all of the World First class World Firsts are not done by an individual solo leveling. They're all a big group of people power leveling a character. So if anybody has a level 85 character on the Ice Crown server, I highly encourage you to come join us on launch night. We're going to get as big a group as possible. We're all going to be hanging out and chatting in Vent. It usually takes 3, 4, 5 hours to level somebody up to the max level when you're doing group leveling method. And the way it works, the way that all of these world firsts go, is one person, the person that everybody's trying to power level, runs around in some target-rich zone, usually a few zones away from the start zone, right? You don't want all sorts of people around. So maybe you start at like a level 86, 87 area. So everybody heads out there. One dude just runs around tagging every single mob they can possibly find, and everybody else kills that mob and keeps the power leveling person healed if he does get munched on. And you just do that for hours and hours and hours, and then eventually you move a couple zones further up the chain to finish stuff off. So it's crazy big, awesome power leveling fun. And like I said, we're going to be in Vent the whole time. Bella has promised to tell us stories to keep us entertained
and awake.
And we'll see how quickly we can charge from 85 to 90. And the great thing is you're only really sacrificing, sort of your first night, because it should only be a handful of hours. And so yeah, it should be big fun. So if you have a level 85 on the Ice Crown server, please join us. You can head over to warcrafthuntersunion.com where there's a post on it with a little bit more details, and you can also sort of let us know if you're gonna be there by leaving a comment, or just come show up. It should be big fun.
Yeah, and again, you're not going to be doing any of the quests or anything like that at this point. You're just going to go out there, and the idea is in your current gear and at level 85, a big enough group of people should be able to kill anything and everything that they run up against, whether it's level between 85 and 90. It shouldn't be any problem, and you shouldn't have to worry about dying.
All I'm going to be doing for 3 hours is running in circles and pinging things and desperately hoping everybody else picks them up before they butcher me. So I'm going to be I've actually been working a little bit on what kind of spec I'm going to want, because I'm going to be a very, pretty much all I'm going to be doing is arcane shots. And so I'm going to be a very different from standard leveling spec for that.
Yeah, I would imagine, like you said, arcane shot, AoE stuff too. I would suspect some multi-shots.
I'm not going to AoE.
No?
I mean, that's everybody else. Everybody else is.
They're your AoE?
My job is to run around and tag things. Tag things and get them back to the group. So yeah, it's going to be exciting. And yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting because when you go under that theory that all you want is like one shot on something and keep moving and find the next thing and one shot on them, suddenly a lot of your talent choices change. Some of them are the same, but some stuff that you think would be good, like here's someone in the chat room is talking about Thrill of the Hunt. And that's not really helpful because you have to be hitting a signature shot to proc Thrill of the Hunt. And, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to be arcane.
Yeah, what you could do is you could just...
I think I'm going to grab Fervor so I can constantly regen the focus between arcanes.
Yeah, you could also just park your pet in a spot and have everybody stand next to your pet and just MD your stuff to the pet, so that way...
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
You can kind of control where the mobs are likely to go at that point and where damage is going to be.
Not a bad idea, and just actually... Because I think, isn't MD off the GCD now?
I believe so. I know there's a glyph that you can just basically constantly... It's always available to cast on your pet.
At that point, I can just macro MD into the arcane shot and just run around. Pew, 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 pew. And everything will go swarming over to the pet. That's a fantastic idea, Dark Brew. I love it.
Excellent.
However, let's take a little bit to talk about leveling for everybody else. that's not doing a crazy, ridiculous group leveling, standard leveling stuff.
Yeah, then we should definitely do that. So I guess we're talking about hunters. We don't care about how the other classes level here. So I guess what one of the things everybody wants to know is which spec. Is there one best spec to level as, or are we?
There really, really, really isn't. I did play around a little bit in the beta. Soloing is all 3 different specs, and I have to say I really, really enjoyed soloing as Beast Mastery, and the changes to Kill Command, which hopefully everybody's experienced by now, make it no longer this giant handicap for leveling. Because previously the problem was with Kill Command in Cataclysm, with Kill Command being your signature shot, you had to wait for your flippin' pet to get to every single target. That's no longer an issue with the pet charging over with the Kill Command from a distance. So I kind of like going Beast Mastery. You have a little bit of a tougher pet. So when you get into those tight situations, you're like, whoops, I accidentally pulled 3 leads. You're more likely to pull out of it with less effort, but you can totally level as anything. It is very easy to level as everything. We're hunters. Hunters are excellent at leveling, so I would do this as BM, semicolon, however, comma. Everybody should level as whatever the heck they want.
Yeah, I like survival as a spec, but I'm probably going to go as Beast Mastery. In part of that's because shots like Black Arrow, I really don't get a chance to take advantage of that and have the dot tick long enough to trigger the lock and loads. And I don't know that I feel like firing traps off to try and do that. So, and I do generally enjoy Beast Mastery. So I'm probably going to go with BM as well. But like you said, any of those specs, you can do it at whatever one you like.
And actually, you bring up a really good point, which is true of any spec. When you're leveling, keep in mind you're no longer paying attention to raid rotations, shot rotations. Stuff isn't going to be up long enough for you to bother putting up a dot. So you don't want to put up Serpent Sting. You don't want to put up Black Arrow, unless it's like, some big, super tough elite, which, that's the levels higher than you, which you might come across every now and then. But so for the most part, you're really sending in your pet, hitting Kill Command, hitting some arcane shots, maybe another Kill Command, maybe regenerating some focus. But ideally, not even having to bother to regen focus very much with Cobra Shot. So you also like spending the time to put up Hunter's Mark, also not really worth it.
Right. But we can talk about that too when we get to the glyphs. I mean, and luckily we no longer have to worry about that. I think it's the glyph of Marked for Death, which I think most people will want to use.
And when I also in theory, there's a lot of interesting choices to be made with what aspect you want to be in. Because some people, the general rule of thumb is like, be an aspect of the Hawks, you can get the most damage. But, there's also logic to being into Fox, so you can, fire those other shots on the move. But me, I think that I would be doing this, and when I was playing on the beta, I eventually, because, you can kill stuff pretty quickly. And I tended to, round up lots of stuff. I'd be MDing it to my pet and shoot this and this and this and this. And I'll kill all of those, AoE loot them, move on. And so actually being in Cheetah is kind of a nice way to do it. You don't get the extra damage, but you're killing trash mobs. Damage isn't really a big issue.
Yeah, that's a good idea because, like I said, with the glyph, you don't get the daze effect is removed, so all you do is run at the speed that you would normally be running at.
Right. Worst case scenario, you run at normal speed, but best case scenario, you've got the extra speed boost, which is very nice.
Yeah.
But speaking of pets, your choice of leveling pet is really, really very wide open. Without question, if you're going to be doing crazy AoE pulls of 3, 4, 5 mobs and stacking them all up and AoEing them down, if you're doing that, of course you want to spec your pet tenacity. But realistically, when you're leveling, those situations aren't really common, right? Most of the time you're, getting your quest and running over to here and you're killing a few of these things and killing a few of those things. You're not doing those big AoE pulls that often. So, if you're talking 1 or 2 targets, Ferocity works just fine. And I kind of even prefer it because stuff dies a little bit faster.
Yeah, I like Ferocity as well, and I don't know what the limitation is as far as switching them. I mean, do you have to go to a trainer to do that, or I thought I read somewhere that you can actually
switch them. Yeah, you can switch them out of combat.
Yep, as long as you're out of combat, that you can go ahead and switch them around any time. So you can sort of, if you want to take the time to do that and play it by ear.
You can also get a feel for it a little bit. But in terms of which pet to choose, there's a few options. I was doing some checking using Female Dwarf. Using Female Dwarf Beta to get an idea of what Female Dwarf said, what pet buff brought the most damage. And it's interesting because you have to look at it without raid buffs turned on, right? Because you're soloing. So you're like, okay, well, what's best if I don't have raid buffs? It's just me and my pet. And at that point, Shale Spiders came significantly on top because they give you 5% agility. That's an exotic pet. Only works if you're playing Beast Mastery, which we're kind of thinking is we kind of prefer for leveling, but I'm sure a lot of people will level in other specs, in which case your second choice really comes down to Cats and Spirit Beasts, which bring the Mastery buff. And I did all this checking, by the way, with Beast Mastery. So Cats and Spirit Beasts for Beast Mastery were a tiny bit better than the pets that brought the crit buff, which is Wolves, Devil Sores, Water Striders, and if you're not BM, you probably want the Wolf, Devilsaur, or Water Strider for the crit buff. And it is worth mentioning, no matter what pet you're bringing, it is probably worth going out and taming a Water Strider right now before Mists of Pandaria comes, because they're an exotic pet, so you gotta have a BM spec. But they have the walk on water ability.
They do have the water walking ability, yes.
And there's a lot of water in Mists of Pandaria. And there's a lot of times where walking on water is, very handy. And you can pick those up. You can pick up the Fen Striders over in Zangarmarsh in BC. But it's definitely, as a utility pet, it's definitely worthwhile having it in your stable as long as you also have a BM spec somewhere in your pocket.
Well, that's the thing. It's an exotic pet, so you have to have BM. I mean, and that's just the way they've designed it. Some of the best pets are the exotic pets which require Beast Mastery. So,
yeah, and the water walking is just fantastic. So on the talent front, there's a lot more, I think, choices in talents than there ever have been before, which was one of the goals of the Mists of Pandaria design. But I still think for leveling, there's some talents that are better than others. And so my kind of opinion of the leveling talents, starting with level 15. Level 15 talent is, I think, the most wide open tier. This is the disengaged tier. We have bonus effects from disengage. You could make arguments for any talent in the disengaged tier. Personally, I kind of like Post Haste, which gives you the speed boost after disengaging, because I kind of feel like in the process of leveling, the most useful thing, frankly, is anything that enhances your movement. Because you spend more time running from place to place, riding from place to place, walking from place to place, than you do anything else. Spend more time doing that than you do killing things.
Yeah, and certainly in terms of the way you're planning to level here, that's probably a useful thing. If you know what your next target's going to be, you can disengage in that direction and run faster.
Engage, and have that movement boost. I mean, but you can absolutely use any of the level 1500 talents. At level 30, which is the CC tier, I strongly feel Wyvern Sting is your best bet. Wyvern Sting is very useful in 5-mans, so when you're going through dungeons as you're leveling, and Wyvern Sting just in general, having that on-demand CC is super, super handy.
I like that. I like that one too. I mean, I tend to save Silencing Shot for the raid situations, and then Wyvern Sting for everything else.
Mm-hmm. So the level 45 tier, which is the self-healing tier, I super, super think Spirit Bond is the way to go. Because you generally will always have enough downtime between pulls to heal yourself and your pet to full just with Spirit Bond. So it's, aspect of the Iron Hawk is really a rating advantage, not for soloing. And Exhilaration is really a good PvP thing for that spike heal, but when you're leveling, at most, you're taking a little bit of damage here and there. Your pet is sort of steadily taking a little bit of damage, and just having that steady Spirit Bond healing going on really nice.
Yeah, I like that too. And for the one point that you mentioned, where your pets should be taking the brunt of your damage, and while he may not get into a critical position, it's going to save you some time getting him healed up. He's going to get that steady stream of healing, and there are other things you can do to improve the pet healing overall. So I like Spirit Bond for that as well.
I do too. I think it's a really and Spirit Bond is the largest overall healing of all of them. Exhilaration does more healing in a short time, but overall, Spirit Bond is kind of the most total healing that happens. Looking at the level 60 Hunter Talents, which is all the focus regen ones, I really like Fervor. I think Fervor is ideal for leveling. Because Fervor, it's a button, it restores 50 focus to you and your pet, and an additional 50 focus over 10 seconds. This thing only has a 30-second cooldown. It is the perfect ability to hit between pulls. Like, you run out, you kill this guy, you kill that guy, hit Fervor, bam, immediately killing the next guy without having to use those Cobra shots to regen the focus. I mean, Dire Beast is probably the worst for leveling in this tier.
Yeah, it's the most fun, but I agree that for leveling, it's not as ideal, especially because you don't even know how long the target may be alive, and
exactly, because
other issues with that.
Dire Beast, it's another button to push, which sucks right there. But it's also, you only get the focus as long as that beast is attacking the target, and in leveling, the target's probably going down fast. Thrill of the Hunt is okay. This is the one that gives you a chance when you use your signature shot, that the cost of your next 3 arcane shots or multi-shots is reduced by 20. But it basically makes your next 3 arcane shots free. And that can be really handy while you're killing stuff, but it's really spiky, especially in just a very few, you maybe use 2 signature shots when you're killing a mob. And so it's really spiky. Like, some mobs you'll get it, like, oh my god, pew, 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 pew. A couple mobs you won't get it. And so it's not as consistent as Fervor. Fervor lets you get into a nice killing pattern. You always got focus. You're always ready to go. Thrill of the Hunt, sometimes you'll be out, sometimes you'll be overflowing. So, I like Fervor. But definitely don't get Dire Beast.
Yeah, and folks in the chat room are saying that, despite what the tooltip says, that Arcane Shot can proc Thrill of the Hunt.
Oh, yes. Thrill of the Hunt is proc by any shot that costs focus and kill command. So, yes, your Arcane Shots, your multi-shots, or whatever can also proc it.
Yeah.
But still, when you use it when you have that talent and you're leveling, it's spiky. You'll be killing some mobs, it doesn't proc. You're out of focus, now you need to Cobra Shot. Other ones, it'll proc, and you're like, oh, okay, now I need to just blow that one away, and I'm still at full focus going to the next. I prefer the more consistent, on-demand focus regen. And also, I think it's cut Fervor, which works a lot better for leveling.
Yeah, and the tooltip is perfectly clear on that. As I read it now, it's like,
I was just remembering it.
Any range attack that costs focus or kill command.
Yeah, it's anything that costs focus will trigger it, or could trigger it. So at level 75.
Oh, and then I guess that for the level level 75. Yeah, I see. I didn't write it in the show notes. I went, we weren't going to talk about that one, but we should talk about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, level 75. I really like Blink Strike, and your option here is Murder of Crows, Blink Strike, or Lynx Rush. Murder of Crows just blows. It's got a really long cooldown. It happens over a really long period of time. It's like 15 seconds for all the crows to appear, and then another 15 seconds before they're done. So it was awesome back when you could reset the cooldown.
Mm-hmm.
That was awesome. You'd have this giant pack of crows following you around, giant murder of crows following you around. Now for leveling, totally not worth it. So you're pretty much down to Blink Strike or Lynx Rush. I like Blink Strike because Lynx Rush, you never know what else the pet's going to jump over and tag. And Blink Strike has a nice short cooldown. It's a 20-second cooldown. That's not necessarily every pull, but it's close to every pull when you're just out soloing stuff. And just, your pet teleports immediately to the enemy, even faster than using a charge, nails them for a whopping 600% normal damage, plus you immediately kill command, right? Send your pet over, Blink Strike, kill command. There's a huge chunk of the mob's health right there. And, you don't even need a misdirect or a growl for your pet to have really, really great aggro. So for solo leveling, Blink Strike, totally the way to go.
Yeah, that's a nice talent, and especially if you're going to be Beast Mastery, it's even better for you.
Right. And kind of a lot of these are like, even if you're not Beast Mastery, I still think Blink Strike is the way
Yeah.
to go. But if you are Beast Mastery, Blink Strike is even better.
And see, I like that because, those are some talents that you're probably not going to use if you're raiding. You may not use them in PvP, and this is an opportunity to take advantage of them and put them to use. And then once you're level 90 and back in the end game, you can respec out of them and go to the more standard things that you would use for raid bosses, etc.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. It's honestly, this is probably the only time in all of Mists of Pandaria that you will spec your hunter for leveling. So might as well do it up and do it right. Get every little advantage that you can get. So on the glyph front, for leveling glyphs, there are actually quite a few that I think are helpful with leveling. And the first one that I'm a big fan of is the glyph of Marked for Death. It's a major glyph that automatically puts up Hunter's Mark. So just when you're arcane shotting, chimera shotting, kill commanding, whatever, it'll just automatically put up Hunter's Mark for you. You don't want to waste time doing it, but hey, it's a good damage boost. You'd like to have it up. It's just not worth wasting any time on pushing the button. So that takes care of it for you. It's going to automatically toss Hunter's Mark up.
Yeah, that's a great one. It's not even it's great for leveling, and it's great for non-leveling as well. That's just probably when you just keep in your rotation.
I think
no matter what you're doing.
I think that's one that's absolutely going to be in the every raiding hunter must-have list. So the more I've been thinking about it, the more I think the number 2 glyph that you want, maybe even the number 1 glyph you want, is the glyph of pathfinding. This is the one that increases the speed bonus of your aspect of the cheetah by 8%, and it boosts your mounted speed by 10%. And like I said, when you're leveling, you probably are spending a lot more time running from place to place than you are killing anything. So the number 1 way to improve your leveling, to shorten your leveling time, and to get you to doing what you want to do faster. Nobody really likes walking around. If you like doing that, you could just walk around whenever you wanted. So shortening that is huge. And this is particularly good, as we're about to bring up, because you're probably going to be an aspect of the cheetah a lot. And so increasing that speed bonus of aspect of the cheetah is really, really nice because you're spending all your time, running around from vendor to vendor, running around from mob to mob. Being able to do that in cheetah and having a faster cheetah, big advantage for the hunter.
Yeah, and that really is probably going to be the advantage for most people would be the bonus to aspect of the cheetah. Because if you're in a level 3 guild, you have the guild perk that increases your mount speed already, and they don't stack. So
that's a very good point. They do not stack. You're really getting this for the aspect of the cheetah bonus. The other 2 major glyphs that I would choose between, and actually maybe there's even 3 more that I'd consider. The glyph of misdirection, as we talked about, is huge. You can actually really just macro that into your shots too. So glyph of misdirection is the glyph that sets it up. So if you're misdirecting to your pet, it resets the cooldown. So you can just misdirect your pet on every shot, which is great. It used to be like this must-have leveling glyph, soloing glyph. It's no longer that essential now that pets have a growl that's an actual taunt. You have a lot less issues with pets holding aggro, and especially if you're BM with kill command, let alone Blink Strike, you really aren't too concerned about your pet holding aggro. You probably really only need to misdirect on AoE stuff, and even then, with Beast Cleave, pets are better than ever at holding AoE aggro. So that's why I don't consider it a required glyph, but I think a lot of people will really like it.
yeah, I like this one. It's just kind of nice to get that little bit of extra security that you're not going to pull off your pet that easily. I don't know. I find it to be particularly handy. But again, it depends on the content too that you're doing.
Right. And I kind of feel like the other 2 options is the glyph of mending. This is what makes your mend pet heal for 60% more. So glyph of mending is huge for the amount of damage your mend pet can heal. Semicolon, however, comma, probably not going to need to hit mend pet that often, which makes this sort of a, when you're really up against it, you got the 3 elites that your pet's tanking. Hey, this is awesome. Most of the time, you're never going to hit mend pet, which is why it might also be worth considering the glyph of Animal Bond. This is the glyph that increases the healing done to you and your pet by 10%. And the nice thing about the Glyph of Animal Bond is it works with Spirit Bond. Right? Spirit Bond is
Right.
healing you and your pet every couple seconds, and this just increases it by 10%. 10% is not a huge increase, but it's the great thing is it's passive. You don't have to hit a button. You don't have to think about it. Just getting a little bit more healing. So I like that.
Yeah.
So that's it for the major glyphs, but I would absolutely get Glyph of Marked for Death and Glyph of Pathfinding with the understanding that you want to spend a lot of your time on foot in Cheetah.
Yeah, I like those choices. I mean, what I would recommend too is that you keep a couple of stacks of whatever the reagent is to swap those in and out, and just be prepared to
Absolutely.
modify for your situation. Because the glyph of camouflage is another one that could be useful. I mean, which is the one that actually gives us a stealth ability. So there may be some caves and things where it may not be worth it to you to have to fight the mobs on your way in and on the way out.
And, stuff like Glyph of Mending is a good one to have in your back pocket. So it's like, oh, I'm going to be fighting an elite 3 levels higher than me. Okay, I probably want the Glyph of Mending now. 95% of the time I don't. But on the minor glyph front, most of the minor glyphs, as we've talked about before, are really cosmetic, right? And they really don't do much of anything, which makes it really easy to take the 2 that actually do something for leveling. The first of which is Glyph of Aspect of the Cheetah. And all that glyph does is if you're in Aspect of the Cheetah and you take damage, you don't get the daze effect. Instead, you just move back to normal speed.
Yeah, that's a nice one. I like that.
And that's really huge for leveling. So you can, because frankly, the extra damage bonus of being in Hawk isn't that important in leveling. Most of the time, it's not going to shorten the time to kill a mob by 1 shot. If it doesn't shorten it by 1 shot, it doesn't save you any time at all. Particularly since with Glyph of Marked for Death, you're going to have your Hunter's Mark up automatically. So it's really, really kind of nice to have Glyph of Aspect of the Cheetah. Frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if this is just a default glyph that all hunters always have, because it's a minor glyph and there's so few minor glyphs that do anything at all, that Glyph of Aspect of the Cheetah is really kind of a no-brainer. The other one that I think is fun is Glyph of Fetch, which is a glyph that lets your pet go loot things for you. I'm honestly a little dubious on whether this actually is going to save you any time. You kill a bunch of things. It's not that hard for you to be standing at the dead body at the end of the fight. On the other hand, you usually, because keep in mind we have no minimum range too. On the other hand, it's really fun, and maybe it's useful. The downside of Glyph of Fetch is you do have to be standing still while your pet is fetching. Which it would be great if you could just be running to your next target and tell your pet, hey, I'm running over here, go pick up all that loot and bring it back to me.
Yeah, that would be nice. And there are some useful macros that are floating around out there related to this glyph. But yeah, I think the Glyph of Fetch could be one that people want to choose.
Yeah, and it is worth go ahead, look up, just go online, look up a fetch macro. There's all sorts of different ones. They all work just fine. The key is you have to have the dead dude targeted in order to cast fetch. And when you kill something, you detarget them.
Yeah.
So most of the glyphs are set up to just target your last target and have your pet go loot them. And so that's cool.
Yeah, the other one that might be useful too for when you hit level 87 is the Glyph of Stampede.
That's an interesting point. I'm not. Yeah,
I like it from this standpoint. If you know you're going to be out on there's certain pets and zones that you want to tame, and you want to try and keep a couple of stable slots open in order to tame some pets along the way, you might want to have you would want to have that
Stampede is
glyph.
Stampede's set up by default now. They changed it so if you don't have...
Oh, that's right. They did.
It automatically clones. So if you have exotics, it clones your pet. That's out.
Never mind.
So I feel like Glyph of Stampede is probably going to be one of those mandatory rating ones. So that you can just always have copies of your pet out.
Yes.
But for leveling, I don't think it's super useful. There's the Glyph of Tame Beast. I don't think that's really important. I mean, honestly, you're not going to be taming more than even at the outside, like a dozen things. So the amount of time the Glyph of Tame Beast is going to save you probably isn't going to make any
Yeah,
difference.
no, the Glyph of Tame Beast, that to me, that's a useful thing. If there's any risk that you might get killed in the process of taming something, if something's
That's really what it's for, right?
immune to a trap or something along those lines, that's what you need it for. Something where you need to get the thing tamed immediately.
Right.
But beyond that, I don't know that it's of a big use.
So that's so let's talk about general preparation for the expansion outside of your hunter specific specking. Like, what are we going to do to get ready? Because I even have right now I have my little list of stuff to get done this weekend in prep for leveling. Because of course, a lot of leveling stuff is clearing bank slots and doing dailies, and it's all kinds of stuff that really it's not hunter specific, but darn it, we still need to know it.
Yeah, that's right. It's all the kind of things that'll just make your entire leveling experience all that more enjoyable because you've taken the time to prepare for the fact that this is a whole new way of playing the game now. I mean, these expansions only come once every couple of years.
Yeah, and I think the number one thing that you're going to need to do in terms of prep is empty your damn bags and empty your damn bank. You're going to be looting tons of stuff and getting tons of loot. You don't want to have to be running over to a vendor every couple of quest hubs to clear stuff out.
Yep. Check your gold. I mean, if you haven't already got like the 26 slot bags, see about investing in those. I did that finally on my hunter. Loaded him up with those to carry around to give me a few extra slots. And like I said, take advantage of the void storage and put some of that gear and armor that you're not going to touch.
Yeah,
just fill that thing up. I mean, it's not free. It's not super cheap, but you'll appreciate all the bank space that you free up in the meantime.
And that's the big thing. I mean, you really want, at most, maybe one bag worth of worth of stuff on you. I mean, you really want to be brutal about clearing out your bags, but then likewise your bank, because you're going to get lots of stuff that, at least the way that I frequently do it, I'm running around, I'm doing stuff, I'm looting, I'm selling stuff off. I'm like, oh God, I'm not sure. Maybe this will be useful. Maybe it won't. I don't know. I'm going to shove it in the bank and worry about it later. So, I mean, having all that bank space, especially for whatever your profession is, you're going to be getting a whole bunch of whatever the heck you need for your crafting professions. So make sure you have space to store all of that.
You can also consider getting that Traveler's Tundra mount from Dalaran if you haven't done that. I mean, it still costs $14K, but by today's amounts, that's not that much.
I don't even have $14K, dude.
Really? See, I have like about $80K right now, and I feel poor. But of course, that's because I, sit next to Euripides. You know what I mean? So next to him, I definitely am poor. But I don't know. My sense is that $80K feels poor. But it is an account-bound mount, so once you purchase it once, it's a mount you'll have available on all the tunes that you would plan to level. So you're going to level up 10 hunters. You're good to go.
Right, and certainly if you're an engineer, you should have Jeeves on hand, and so you will be able to. I think Jeeves is 1 hour now, so you will be able to sell your stuff off to Jeeves periodically in the field if you happen to be in the field for a long time between towns.
Yeah, I had also recommended, maybe making some of the more disposable bots on hand. It depends. I don't know. Sometimes my bags fill up and I end up with lots of cloth and meats and things that I want to hang on to for cooking, but I don't want to sell. And sometimes that stuff can fill up. So, and the ones that only require
sometimes to have Molly on hand.
Yeah,
you can mail stuff around.
Yeah. Yeah, Molly's good, but those ones, there's, which set of repair bots was it from pre-Jeeves? 10 Serenite bars, and you can make like 5 of them. So it's not that hard to do. So I'll probably have a stack of 20 or so of those, just in case.
Hey, this reminds me, is there any kind of flask that gives you hit or expertise rating?
I don't know that there's a flask that does that. There are probably potions, but don't quote me on that.
Because it would definitely be useful to have. You're not going to need to worry about hit or expertise for your first couple of levels. But once you're hanging out at like level 88, level 89, you're probably going to be a concern. In the chat room, somebody says there's a battle elixir, and somebody else says there's a food buff. So if you guys can find out what those are called, so we can let people know, that would be awesome. But that's something that, like I said, it's because right now you should be geared and reforged to be at 7.5% hit and 7.5% expertise. As you go up in levels, those percentages are going to go down as the combat rating conversions change, right? So like right now you have 7.5%. You don't change any gear, you hit level 86, all of a sudden you're at 5%, right? It's plummeted. That's okay, because now with the changes, you only need 3% to be capped against mobs that are the same level as you. So it's not going to be until you're like 88 that you're starting to start missing and getting dodged. Ooh, Elixir of Impossible Accuracy gives you a 225 hit.
But yeah, that's a good point because, most people gravitate towards, okay, here's my agility food buff, let me get the agility flask and et cetera. But like you said, and not that that's not helpful, but as you level and the combat ratings change, you may, like you said, hit and the expertise and things like that may be more important to you. And, depending on the level of gear that you have, you may not be replacing your gear for a few levels as it is.
Yeah. And odds are, honestly, you're probably, most of your gear, you're not going to be replacing until you're like level 89. You'll have a couple pieces. There's always like the one or two pieces that you replace like right away, and it sucks. But one of the big things that kills you is, you got to keep in mind your gear now all has gem slots, which the green gear that drops won't. And the gear you have now is enchanted. And frankly, unless you're Euripides money bags, it ain't worth enchanting gear that you get at level 88 and you're going to replace at level 90.
No, not at all.
A few days. So you really got to compare the stats on the new gear versus the gemmed and enchanted stats on your existing gear. And it's going to be, you're really over geared right now for level 90. So it's going to be a while before your gear really starts upgrading. And once that happens, that's when your DPS will start going up again. Because that's the other thing with the combat rating changes, which includes crit and haste and mastery, all of that stuff is going to go down as you go up levels. And so your DPS is going to go down until you start getting to like level 89, 90. It's going to start going up again.
Yeah, and speaking of all that kind of stuff, I recommend if you have any epic gems hanging out in your bags that you've been saving for those pieces, the last few pieces of heroic gear, well, chances are you're not going to get that gear. So you might want to just pop them into your current gear and just upgrade those gems. In fact, that's something I had done. I'd had a few of those epic gems, and so it was a nice little boost. It was additional 50 agility over what I had before or something like that. It was nice.
And so let's see. Get this says that Crocolisk au gratin is food that gives you a 90 expertise buff. So we have the Elixir of Impossible Accuracy for 225 hit, the Crocolisk au gratin for 90 expertise. And so both of those are things that, like I said, you're not going to need the first couple of levels, but eventually they'll be nice. So it's probably not a bad idea to have a handful of those, a stack of those sitting around in your bags, just so when the time comes, you don't have to worry about missing and being dodged. Because, wow, let me tell you, that knows when your signature shot is whiffs.
Yeah, and Xiaomi in the chat room said there's also the Elixir of the Naga, which will give you 225 expertise, which is also a battle elixir. So those elixirs last for 1 hour. They don't persist through death, so just keep that in mind. You don't want to die anyway, but if you do, you'll have to pop another one of those.
Right.
What else do we want to have people do? Like I said, we had mentioned before, carrying around the reagents for switching out talents and glyphs and things. That's helpful. Now, I don't know. Right now it's a Dust of Disappearance. There is another reagent from Mists of Pandaria, but I don't know if that kicks in when the expansion launches or how that works, or if it's only at level 90 and above.
One of the other things that's worth doing is sort of a standard expansion strategy is to go before, right now, this weekend, go out and fill your quest log with 25 completed daily quests, but don't turn them in. So you have 25 completed quests so that when the expansion hits, you can go immediately turn in all 25 of these quests, and that usually gets you like a quarter of a level right there. And there's no faster way to get XP than that.
Yeah, just make sure you
check. Semicolon, however, comma.
Yeah, exactly.
In Cataclysm, there was a bug for the first half hour that Cataclysm was live that you weren't getting XP for turning in quests. And so myself and lots of other people turned in their 25 quests, got no XP for them. And then it was like, oh, that was a bug. We fixed it within a half hour. And I have to say, the cynical part of me, and I'm normally not a conspiracy theorist about this stuff, but the cynical part of me really has to wonder, like, did they just deliberately do that, for the first half hour to just screw over all those people who were storing that up for that speed level boost? Because wow, that must have been a huge percentage of the people who actually did that. That most of the people that do that are right there on night one. Must be a huge percentage of the people that just got screwed over by that.
I would think so.
and so the way to double check is obviously turn one of them in and make sure you're actually getting XP on your bar goes up by the amount of XP that you should be getting.
That's a good point. And as far as dailies, Tol Barad has an excellent set of dailies that are all in close proximity, so you won't have to spend a lot of time running around turning those in. I think we talked about Deepholm having some again that are close together, not a huge quantity.
Deepholm's got a good cluster, and generally, like if we do the Tol Barad ones, you can hang on at Tol Barad, pop back to Stormwind, take the port to Deepholm, the port back. You really should within 5 to 7 minutes be able to turn in your 25 mobs.
Yeah, and then there was also those Firelands dailies. I'd have to go back and double check those because I thought there was like 3 or 4 that were like outside the little instance area. But
that's right. No, I think there are.
There are, but I didn't know if you had to complete some of those before they allowed you to do some other ones. Not necessarily in terms of whether or not you've unlocked them, but there might be a sequence there where you have to do the ones outside the little instance area, and then once you turn those in. But I like I said, I had to double check that. But if not, then that's a good place to go and do it. But that's another area of concentrated dailies that you should consider doing.
Yeah, and so the idea is, obviously you want your dailies to be clustered in hubs, right? So it's like, okay, I can turn in 5 dailies here, I can turn in 7 dailies here, not like one here, one over there, one over here. But yeah, no, stocking yourself up on completed dailies, so you have all that to turn in on day one gives you a nice little XP boost, right? That's a good 4 or 5 bars of XP that you'll just burn out in 5 to 7 minutes, which is a good deal. Certainly be aware that your main city is going to be overflowing. One thing we discussed before the show is how you actually get to Pandaria.
Oh, right.
Which I think you had that one, Dark.
Yeah, so basically what'll happen is if you're in Stormwind, you should just get a quest that pops up automatically in your quest log. You'll see a little UI graphic in there. And I think you talk to the king or someone like that, and that'll start you on your journey to Pandaria. If you go to Stormwind now, you'll see a big flying ship over the city, and that's related to the intro quest to take you to Pandaria. And I'm going to guess that there's probably something similar for the Horde in Orgrimmar. So you want to make sure you visit your capital city before going to Pandaria, or before trying to get to Pandaria.
Yeah, and another thing that's worth pointing out is even if you're not going to do the whole stocking up on daily quests to turn in, definitely make sure that your quest log is empty. If you have any straggling quests hanging out in there, dump them. So you got plenty of room to take the new quests you're leveling.
Yeah, Blizzard has been much better about not having them overflow from each zone, but it's still a very good practice is to go in there with as empty a quest log as you possibly can, just so you have room to fill it up with 25. But if it is empty, you shouldn't have any problem, like the old days where you'd have more quests than you could possibly store in your log. It was
certainly, another general prep thing, in addition to cleaning up your bag space, is make sure, build your leveling spec, whatever spec you're going to level with, whether you're going to take our advice or come up with your own thing, get it put together, get the glyphs, and get some glyphs that you might consider, have the reagent to change them, but also have those backup glyphs learned. And clean up your action bars. I don't know if other people have this issue, but I have a whole bunch of action bar slots with temporary junk that just slowly fills up and clogs up over time. Keep in mind you are going to be getting new abilities. You're going to get Stampede, and then you're going to get your level 90 talent, which is going to be a new shot. So make sure you got a space for that. And something else that be aware that it is. With very few exceptions, Usually the safest thing to do is when you log in on expansion day, just, if you can at all, turn off all of your add-ons. If you can't, you know what? Just double check and re-update all of the add-ons right beforehand. Most of them are updated and are working on the beta or on the PTR, but you never know when an add-on's going to break, and broken add-ons literally can crash your game and will crash your game.
Yeah, they can't. I mean, it shouldn't really be as bad because I think the bulk of what we'd be getting in Mists of Pandaria we've gotten already. I mean, the add-ons should be pretty much good to go at this point, but that's an excellent point that if there is a problem, it's probably not the expansion. It's probably one of your add-ons that's causing the issue.
And nothing's worse than having a buggy add-on that crashes your game. And you're like, God damn it. You relog in, you turn off your add-ons, and now you're in a queue because your realm is full.
Right.
But that sucks. No, but if you have add-ons that you absolutely like, I can't level without my blah add-on, you just make sure that you download the updated version as shortly before it's time to log in as possible. And honestly, add-ons also, I mean, keep in mind that not just when you're in your capital city, but also when you're in those starting zones in Pandaria, there's going to be so many people that you also want to have any heavy add-ons disabled. I mean, you don't want to put any more burden on your machine as possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, just know that the areas, especially that first week, those first few days, they're going to be crowded. I mean, more so than what you're used to seeing. Everyone's going to be leveling. Everyone's going to be doing that same content, and you're just going to have to be fighting for mobs and all that other stuff.
And Blizzard has their dynamic spawning for most mobs now, so the more people are there, the faster they respawn, which just creates insanity where mobs are popping like the second after they die, and like 80 people are trying to shoot it, quickly trying to tag it, and oh my god, it can be madness. Something else that's worth having is a macro to interact with a target, because sometimes you get these NPCs that just have like a throng of 100 people packed around it, and you can't click them. And so it's, in that case, having a macro to interact with the nearest target so you can pop up their chat window to turn in your quest. That can be handy.
Yeah, I that's a good point. Or something where someone decides to pull out their biggest, most giant mount and stand on top of the quest giver.
Yeah, stand on top of it. There's always some douchebag who's doing that.
Yeah. One other thing that's worth noting is the heirloom items. Of course, they're not designed to grant you the XP bonus beyond level 85. So don't waste your time trying to equip the cloak or the helm or any of that stuff. That will not work. I have been told that the guild standards, those banners and things, will give you the XP. So if you plop those down when you're fighting, you should get the XP gain
which is very
from those, which is very cool.
Alrighty, well, let's hit some Q&A. So our first question comes from Shiami. It says, Frost will begin his quest to server first, then remember how much he hates leveling, ask someone else to do it, and be at level 90 in 4 hours. That's how I leveled on the beta. Question, does your pet get the stealth bonus damage if you use Blink Strike? That's a fantastic question that I have not tested.
Yeah, and I think that's come up before, and we didn't know the answer then either. But yeah, this would be for the like the cats and the spirit beasts that have the prowl, right?
Yeah, I mean,
ability.
I have to think that from a design standpoint, they wouldn't want that to happen because there's potential issues with that being used in raids, and all of a sudden you have a best pet again. Like, oh, this pet does more damage than any other pet. So my hunch is it shouldn't. That doesn't mean it doesn't, but I certainly have not tested it. That's a really good question.
Yeah, this sounds like sort of like a crossing the streams issue, right? I mean, on the one hand, you've got Prowl, which gives you a DPS boost, but the speed is limited of your pet, and then you've got Blink Strike, which damage boost, but increases the speed pet. And it just sounds like all sorts of bad things can happen using these two things together. And I'm not sure who's going to win.
Yeah, what I think the biggest issue with it would be if you did get both and you were using Blink Strike, which only has a 20-second cooldown, right? It would make sense to create a macro to force your pet into stealth and Blink Strike in a raid situation. Because then all of a sudden you're like, hey, my cat or spirit beast does more damage than any other pet, which is a situation they don't want. So from a design perspective, I have to think they really don't want it to happen, but I would be interested to see if it is.
Let's see. Uranome had a question. He said, "Hi, Ali." He said, "I'd like to ask what pet each of the guys will be leveling with on a purely personal preference basis, and why." That's a good question. I don't know what I'm going to be leveling with. I've got these 9 spirit beasts, so I'm probably going to be Lokwanaha first because I just like the look of that spirit beast. It's like the one spirit. It was the first spirit beast they introduced in the game, and it's the only one that doesn't look like it's a ghost or an actual spirit beast. So I kind of like that one. So, and I don't run as Beast Mastery very often, so I will probably start out with that, but I don't know. I'll probably bounce them around.
I'm planning to use my worm or a Hydra because I just really like them.
Okay.
The worm the fuzzy worm from Dragonblight. I just love that worm. I don't know why. Hydra because it's like the old Sunday monster movies, the Godzilla movies.
Sure.
The 2-headed Hydra that shoots lightning. That's always fun.
I'm probably gonna be using my cat, Scratch Fury, which is the White Lion model, because I have a fondness for Scratch Fury, and I'll probably have my cat Tenacity Spect, just because the way I'm leveling with the group leveling is, I'm gonna definitely try your Dark Brew's idea of just planting the pet and letting everybody else stand by the pet while I MD everything that I tag over to the pet. In which case, for the few attacks that get through, I want to make sure the pet has as much of a ability to take that damage as possible. But if I was solo leveling, I would be doing it BM because I'm not. I'm kind of leaning toward survival right now. Mostly for the entrapment.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good thought.
Just so if I get stuck with something coming after me and nobody's taking it off me, I can entrapment and disengage and get it locked up so somebody else can take it down. All right. Next question comes from Sayus, who says, I postulate that Frost's leveling speed is directly related to the speed at which his wrist hair grows, which is why he doesn't like to level. Therefore, he shall have wrist manes after his 4 to 5 hours of leveling.
No question there, though.
No question, just an answer. Should we go ahead and burn through these emails?
Sure.
All right, well, we have Nemhaz, says, this may be a dumb question, but what happens to a casted shot when a haste effect drops off while it's casting? For example, rapid fire ends just after you hit a hard cast aim shot. I would think it would slow down mid-cast, but it doesn't seem to. Here's another question. For that one, I believe your cast speed is calculated when you start the cast. So if a haste effect drops off or starts partway through a cast, your cast speed is unaffected. It's the next shot that's affected.
Yeah, that's my understanding, too, that it doesn't change midstream, per se.
Right. And then he says, also, now that Murder of Crows benefits from BM Mastery, would that be the talent of choice for single-target fights, and would it be worth waiting to cast it for a discount under Bestial Wrath? I haven't recalculated. It's actually on my to-do list for this weekend, which I don't know if I'll get to. Recalculating the level 90 rotation priorities. I'm not convinced that this is going to be enough to make Murder of Crows worth it. One thing we're really going to have to keep an eye on and be aware of with Murder of Crows is what kind of boss fight mechanics are going on. Because if you have a boss that has that pulsing AoE damage that so many bosses do, sort of the go-to method to keep healers occupied, the danger is that will be killing off your crows as they're spawning.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you won't get the full damage. And almost any time that happens, Murder of Crows is going to be a bad talent choice. So we'll have to see kind of how the boss fight mechanics work out to see if they even let Murder of Crows be an option. But I mean, certainly, yeah, if you can line up your Murder of Crows with Big Red Pet to drop that expensive cost down, that's great. You want to make sure you're not delaying it so much that you reduce the number of times that you can cast Murder of Crows in a fight.
Interesting. Well, and then this leads right into the next email from Cesar, who also had a question about Murder of Crows. And what he wanted to know was, he goes, I know Murder of Crows mass out to be the best DPS option, but does this take into consideration the 60 focus cost that could be used on other shots in our rotation?
It does indeed. And Murder of Crows specifically was working out for non-BM. And it does take into account the fact that we're blowing 60 focus on it. So, I mean, all of the math with the shot rotations absolutely always needs to take into account both the focus cost and what you're losing, your cost of opportunity there, and also what you're losing from losing that global cooldown, right? Like, hey, I have to push this button, and I could be pushing another button. Let's see. Hagu says, I really underplayed my Hunter in Cataclysm, so I'm not your target audience of everyone has 4 piece bonus, but want to fix that in Mists of Pandaria. One of the areas I need help on is the new whack-a-mole cooldowns. Are there sites or resources that will help on add-ons? In particular, blah, 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 blah. So it's basically... Yeah, so he's basically asking something to let him know when these cooldowns are ready or when things have fallen off. And he brings up power ores. You can absolutely program power ores for all of that to make a custom aura to let you know when anything is available. And I haven't used the new JC bar, which is the old/new version of Serenity, but I believe he was setting it up for warnings for all of that stuff, wasn't he?
He has. I've turned some of that off. Yeah, there are a lot of options, and this guy's pretty much named most of them, like Tell Me When and Power Auras. There's another add-on called Weak Auras. Like you said, the JS Hunter bar has a lot of options for that type of stuff. I mean, I
would really recommend looking at JS Hunter bar.
Yes.
It's a really, really, from everything I hear, from everything I've learned, it's a really, really well-coded add-on. It's made by a hunter for hunters, so it's really got great stuff for hunters, and it's like Power Auras is a heavyweight add-on.
Yeah.
And JS Hunter Bar is a lot better at being lightweight.
I'm actually not using the Power Auras or Weak Auras at the moment. I've kind of replaced that with like JS Hunter Bar and a couple of other things as well. So at the moment, the Power Auras is kind of fallen off my list of add-ons that I use. But a great thing to do would be to check out the WoW Hunters Hall every day, and if someone out there has blogged or written about one of these add-ons and how they're using it and their script, you'll find all that information there. And there's lots of different ways to get this information, and it's all going to come down to a little bit of what your own personal preferences and how you like to visually see this information presented to you, whether it's text, icons, audio warnings. I mean, everybody responds a little bit differently to this kind of information, so it's just a matter of setting things up that works best for you. And any of those add-ons have the ability to provide you that information, to let you know when your stings are going to fall off and that kind of thing.
And it's definitely, I think, more so than ever. And I have gotten, it's worth noting, a couple of emails recently about people looking for add-ons to tell them what ability to hit. And I've seen some people try to make those. I've never seen one that really was as good as just learning your rotation yourself.
Yeah, I know.
But I kind of don't approve of them, mostly because they tend not to work.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling if they did work really well, if they really worked really well, and it was just like, it makes giant buttons, and you just keep clicking in the same spot, and the right thing will always fire, Blizzard would probably break that. But I do think it's going to be more important than ever to have some kind of add-ons to let you know when this stuff is available, because there is so much stuff. Actually, Zahir and I were talking
Yeah.
about this a little while ago, that Blizzard maybe boffed a little bit on hunter design. And
Yeah.
And specifically, when you look at some of the other classes, which I hadn't done until some people started talking about it, most of the other classes did not get the number of new buttons to push that we did. And Blizzard even commented at one point that they're like, well, her goal was to try to always have something that was more passive. So if you didn't want another button, you could take a passive option, like Thrill of the Hunt, which is a passive option in the sense it's not another button, but it flipping changes your rotation when it procs. So you still need to be aware of when it happens so you can do the thing, which doesn't really solve the issue in my mind. But
No.
there is the issue that we have our like 3 new buttons, and some of the stuff that's on like 20 and 30-second cooldowns.
Yeah.
That's 1 minute is a short cooldown. 20 and 30-second cooldowns, that's just almost another shot in your rotation at that point.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much more that you want to keep track of now. And it's not even just when do I push the button, it's what's going on, like Murder of Crows. Okay, it's a 2-minute cooldown, so you have to know when the 2 minutes is up, but you also need to know when, are the crows attacking the target still, because especially when you toss in readiness is another ability that kind of throws things off, because there are things that you'll
That's a really good point.
hit readiness for, but you don't want to necessarily fire off the ability right then and there. You need to wait for it to finish off. So, it's things like that really make things complicated.
And it's hunters have come a long ways from the BC one button macro BM hunter. It's it's definitely complicated, and I can't imagine raiding with a level 90 hunter without some kind of add-on to just to let me know this is now available. This is now available. Oh, this just fell off. Oh, this just came on. And it's going to be so many more things to pay attention to, which is going to be a little brutal because, Blizzard's mechanical complexity of raids has steadily gone up from vanilla. Raids are way more, not necessarily tuned harder, but they're more involved mechanics. So you're going to have these really involved mechanics combined with this just horrible number of different buttons and factors to consider. So I am a little concerned that hunters might, at level 90, be crossing the line into just a little too complicated to play.
Yeah, it depends on how they do things. Firelands was a very gimmicky raid. There weren't a whole lot of bosses in there, but there was just a lot of different gimmicks and things that you had to pay attention to.
Sure.
You had to do a lot more other than just DPS, and they kind of backed away from that a little bit with Dragon Soul, but I always think of like that Elisrazor fight. Especially when it first came out. There were so many things that you had to pay attention to, and so many ways that you could just cause a wipe in a matter of 1 or 2 seconds. If you weren't paying attention to things other than your DPS.
So one of the things that concerns me about this is kind of like Cataclysm Hunter PvP, right? Where 95% of all hunters kind of agree that hunters were in a bad PvP spot in Cataclysm, but the very, very top 1% of hunters could kick ass. In fact, the big arena championships was won by a team with hunters on it. And the issue is, like, at the super, super top, best of the best skill curve, hunters were really good. And my concern is you're going to see that skill curve changing a lot for raiding, where you're going to look at, like, the very top raid parses, and it looks like hunters are great. But for the average hunters, they're getting smoked by, people with their 2 and 3 button rotations that are just easier to play. So you're going to find hunters getting harder to play. You're going to find the average hunter DPS going down, even though the balance for the top hunter DPS still looks good. It just takes so much more skill than any other class to perform at that level. And I don't think the other classes are getting as complicated as hunters.
No, perhaps not. Like I said, I haven't really paid attention to too much of the changes for the other classes to see how it compares. But like I said, I do know we got inherited a lot more buttons to push.
Mm-hmm.
It feels a lot now at level 85, and there's still 2 more coming down the pike with Stampede at 87, and then our level 90 talent is another button
Yeah,
push as well.
I guess I don't worry about Stampede so much because that really is a a one time for most
Sure,
folks who
sure.
get once, and usually on the pole, right? So it's like, okay, Stampede, don't have to think about it again. But everything else, and certainly the fact that readiness is available to all specs, because readiness was one of two things that made marksman the most complicated spec.
Yes.
Or one of three things, I guess, because they have improved steady and they have aim shot. But readiness really does throw a wrench in the works, and now that readiness is part of the standard hunter rotation, it's just hunter rotation is it's going to be complicated. It's worse because it's been a long time since we've had rotations, but it is so I'm just dreading having to explain, because this is also on my to-do list this weekend that I don't know if I'll get to, is just explaining here's the level 90 rotation. And it's even worse because it's if you took this talent, then it's this, but if you took that talent, then it's this, but when you do this, you need to do that, but don't do this until this, hit readiness here, except if you took Murder of Crows, then you need to make sure you wait until all the crows are gone before you hit Murder of Crows again. It's it's difficult to explain clearly.
It is, and even with survival, and I think the answer is for example, readiness will also reset the cooldown of explosive shot, which is great, but it'll also reset the cooldown of black arrow. And I mean, do you want to fire that black arrow every time it's or do you want to wait for the dot to finish, for example? I mean,
no, you want to wait for the dot to finish.
I mean, because otherwise, if you fire it right away, you're going to lose out on chance for some lock and load procs, basically. So I mean, that's another one that you kind of have to pay attention to. So you
and why burn focus to overwrite an existing dot? So you're right. That is another complexity of readiness with survival. So survival also has an issue right now with explosive trap is still doing a little too much damage, and Zahara is making a very strong argument for that. You know what? Explosive trap and Black Arrow need to be uncoupled, so that Black Arrow does not trigger the trap cooldown, and then you got to do something to explosive trap to make it clearly never worth using for AoE. My suggestion is, why don't you just take explosive trap and say that initial explodey damage only happens to the target that triggers it, and everybody else gets the dot, or vice versa. So everybody else gets the explodey, and the target that triggers it gets the dot, or but just something to make it so, because there's always this confusion of, oh my god, because this has happened several times. Oh my god, explosive trap is actually better in your rotation. And a lot of that is because of its ability to force the lock and load procs. And so it's you know what? Let's take Black Arrow. Let's just remove the cooldown from it. Because who needs a cooldown for Black Arrow anyway? Just put it up when it's done. And maybe you have to tweak the damage down a little to make that work. That's fine. And then explosive trap, remove lock and load from explosive trap entirely. And set it up so it'll never be worth it on single target damage, but it's clearly the right thing to use in AoE, which is the way it should be, darn it. And this will also solve the issue of right now the glyph of explosive trap, which gives you the knockback effect, is huge in PvP, but that means in PvP, if you want to have the ability to knock people back, you can't be using Black Arrow anymore. Because you never know when, because you don't want to reset the cooldown on the trap. And so it makes it kind of even more confusing. So I think Zahara's got a really, really good argument, a really, really good point that those need to be decoupled, unlinked, and then explosive trap tweaked in a couple ways, one of which has to be removing lock and load, but then also tweaked to make sure it's never worth using on single target. And I think if they make a substantial change there, they can keep this pesky-ass problem that's come up 4 different times from ever coming up again. And another thing, Zahara and I think I talked about this on the show before, but we're sort of talking about, there's this whole notion that as we get more and more abilities, and this is, I think, important to understand, right? From a game design perspective, every class needs to be capable of putting out X amount of DPS, right?
Right.
Well, let's say we want everybody to do 100,000 DPS, right? It does not matter what abilities I give the class. It needs to be capable of about the same. And, sometimes we hit that number well, sometimes we whiff a little bit and have to do nerfs or buffs. And so the important thing to remember is when
when you give hunters lots of new abilities, like, oh, now you have Murder of Crows, and now you have Dire Beast, and now you have Barrage, and now you have Stampede. Okay, we're not increasing the amount of DPS hunters can do. All classes need to do that 100,000 DPS, right? Or whatever that number is. Instead, what we're doing is just making you do more things to get the same number. But what that means is the amount of damage or the percentage of damage contribution of your existing shots has to go down, right? It's like, hey, if you've got a signature shot does 50,000 DPS and arcane shot does 25,000 and auto shot does 25,000, right? You're at 100,000. Oh, wait, we want to add black arrow in. Well, one of those other numbers needs to go down. And so this is what's happened a lot in Mists of Pandaria. A lot of our standard signature shot, arcane shot numbers have had to come down in relation to everything else to make room to shove all of these other abilities in there. And this has reached a point that it's starting to cause problems. And the big problem it's causing is really, really prevalent with survival, but where you're having problems fitting arcane shot in properly. Where it's like, oh, well, like we keep, like explosive shot is dipping down to where arcane shot's almost as good as explosive shot, but damn it, we can't buff explosive shot much because we don't have a lot of wiggle room because we have these other 8 abilities. We can't lower arcane shot too much because all of a sudden it'll be worse than cobra shot. And we've seen this happen with both of these happen with survival. Moments where cobra shot was better than arcane, and where arcane was better than explosive. And because that gap they have to tweak arcane shot damage is so small now because all of these other abilities are stuffing in. So this is another issue, just a mechanical design issue with having all these abilities separate entirely from the fact of just it makes the class a lot harder to play.
Yeah, and it seems like there's not a whole lot that they're able to do, or maybe one option eventually would be to make Cobra Shot and Steady Shot like do no damage and just be for focus regen only, and try and take that damage and put it someplace else. I don't know if that's something they would consider doing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seems to me like my solution right now, off the top of my head, without thinking about it too much, but my solution would be the hunter rotation needs to be simplified a touch. You need to take at least one of these tiers that gives you extra buttons, whether it's the focus regen tier or whether it's the level 90 shot tier. You need to take just one of these tiers that gives you new buttons to push. And you need to turn it all into passive things. A choice between 3 different passive things that don't require a button to push and preferably that don't change up your rotation, right? So it's like, hey, I get to choose an ability and I'm going to get a different kind of advantage, but it's not something that's going to make it more difficult to manage my class. Because I do think we actually need to back up a little bit from where we're at.
Yeah, and then you throw in, what's that one that, Symbiosis? I don't know if a druid will ever cast that on a hunter, but if they do, that's another one that we'd have to be ready for. I think we get dash or something out of it. Nothing, a little speed.
I think we get dash and they get feign dash. It's not a big deal. But yeah, no, I mean, I do think that there's some really real design issues that are, kind of just beginning to rear their heads, and we'll see how significant that is going forward. I certainly would expect in the next expansion to see some scaling back, but the real question is, do we see some kind of scaling back of it, in the next major patch? They go, oh wow, yeah, this is too much for hunters, or maybe they just say, hey, hunters are going to have it tough this expansion. Oh well.
Yeah, and it might be the latter there. It might be that this is just the way it's going to be, and they'll tweak where they can. But as far as anything major, it would have to wait until the next expansion.
All right, well, we will see you guys next week. Hopefully some of you guys I will see on launch night on Icecrown joining us in Vent for the leveling party. And once again, you can go to warcrafthuntersunion.com for all of the details, but basically any level 85, you don't have to be a hunter. Just hop onto Icecrown, join the WHU chat channel, /join space WHU. And then you can hook up with people who are in the group and get the vent info and come join us for our leveling party. It is worth noting next week we will have BRK as a special guest on the show.
Yes. Yep.
Talking with us about life in Mists of Pandaria.
Yeah, that'll be fun because we haven't had him on probably since Has it been a year? I mean, it was almost a year ago that we had our 100th episode. I think it was this weekend a year ago that we were doing episode 100. And we had BRK and a whole bunch of other people on the show. And I don't know that we've spoken with him since that time.
All right. Well, we will see you guys next week.
You have been listening to episode 145 of the Hunting Party Podcast. This is Not Euripides. Go for it, Dark Brew.
And I'm Dark Brew from thebrewhall.com and the Brew Hall on Twitter.
And this is Frosttime from Warcraft Hunters Union, WoW Insider, and Frosttime WHU on Twitter.
And I'm Molly Sonder from the Hunting Party Podcast. Check us out on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or at our RSS feed to your reader. Links are available on the show notes.
And if you like us, don't be shy about leaving us a review on iTunes, especially one where you mention how uncommonly good-looking Frosttime is.
You can submit a title for this week's show by emailing us at huntingpartypodcast@gmail.com. Have your name mangled on air by professionals.
Stay thirsty, my friends, and remember to drink your Dark Brew Lager.
Remember to spay and neuter your feral druids or the Horde.
And don't forget to pay your dues.
I can jump shot, BM, MM, and SB. I can rock out any tree. Never worried about my threat, 'cause I've got FD and misdirect. Catching loose mobs in my traps. I never miss, 'cause I am hit capped. 'Cause I'm the hunter, not the marked. I'm the fighter, not the spark. I'm the kiter, not the kite. I'll top meters every fight. Rated end game, dealing death. Just me, my gun, and my trusty bed. Now let's begin with Illidan, Osirian, and Gil'jadan, Magdamar, Asgalor, Gruul, Cthulhu, and Razorgore, Onyxia to Ragnaros. Which one have we killed the most? Kel'Thuzad to Malygos. We even killed the Kama's ghost. Feels like we're getting close, all that running as a ghost. Yogg-Saron, Nefarian, Sartharian, Magtheridon, Saphiron, Lucifer to Sulfuron, Archanon,